You might be a little confused at this point of time because it is time for the message, and you might have thought that you were coming to hear Lindsay Mason preach tonight. Well, I have to explain something that's happened there. So we had Simon Cowling preaching this morning. We had Lindsay rostered to speak this evening. Unfortunately, someone in senior leadership, I'm not going to name names, mentioned during the week that Zacchaeus was a wee small man, and the two people preaching today are also vertically challenged, shall we say, and when Lindsay heard that, he didn't take it well. So he had a bit of a dummy spit, and so Lindsay won't be preaching tonight. Apologies to anyone who came here expecting that he would be. However, we do have a stand-in, and if by the power of your imagination, you can believe this, it's actually Zacchaeus himself who is here tonight. I kid you not, he's here to share his message, and I believe he's waiting in the vestry. Let me just see if I can find him. Zacchaeus, are you in there? Now, he's a bit shy about his height, so just no jokes or anything.
Oh no, it's no better in the 21st century. Okay, I'll be there in a minute.
It's okay, Zacchaeus. No, come back. We'd love to hear from you.
Just need an aid, that's all.
Right, okay, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, Zacchaeus.
Okay, there we are. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I am sensitive about my height. So would you be too if when you grew up people were saying, "Oh, you're so down to earth, Zacchaeus. Down to earth." Or, "What's the weather like down there, Zacchaeus?" Or, "Stand up, Zacchaeus, so we can see you." "Oh, you are standing up." Did that joke go over your head, Zacchaeus? Yeah, when you grow up like that and people are always taking you on and mocking you and insulting you, it's really hard. It really gets to you. And if you want a bit of respect, if you don't like being trodden on, well, sometimes you make choices. And I made choices that would get me some respect, that would make me somebody. And I chose to collaborate with the Romans. I became a tax collector. And we tax collectors, we had our ways of getting money because the Romans set a certain amount, but everybody else didn't know how much that was, and we could just add our own little margins and our margins. And I was so good at it, I got to be the top tax collector in Jericho. Over all the others, I was really raking it in. And from the Transjordan through to Jerusalem, everything came through there. So the customs duties, they were wonderful. And I got wealth and I got respect, and I was somebody. There was a cost though, of course. Everybody hated me. I was considered religiously unclean. There's no synagogue for me. There were no trips to the temple in Jerusalem for me. I and my family, anybody who came to my home, were religiously unclean. And it meant I'd turned my back on the God of Abraham and on the people of God. But I'm here tonight to tell you that my life turned around. It was changed. And it was changed through an encounter with Jesus. And there was a very serious part of the message right here. There was as a key sentence that was in that passage read from that scroll from you this evening. And some say it's the key to the whole history that Luke wrote, and some people say it's the key to Jesus' whole ministry. And it's when Jesus said, "The Son of Man," that's him. He says, "I came to seek and to save the lost." That's why I came. Now, different people are going to tell you different reasons why Jesus came. They're going to tell you different reasons why Jesus died. But I suggest that you listen to what the Lord himself said. He said, "The reason I came was to seek and to save the lost. And my story is a story of being lost and being found by Jesus. And I think it's even a special case. Maybe you think your story is special too. But I heard that a while before this incident, Jesus had talked about rich people. And he pointed out how it was really, really hard for a rich person to come into the kingdom of God. He said it in such terms that people said, it's impossible. A rich person can't. And he said, well, there are things that are impossible for men, but there are things that are possible for God. And I found that I was able to come into the kingdom of God, and it was possible because of Jesus. Now, Jesus was coming into town, into Jericho. He was passing through town. He was not stopping. That's clear from the language that's used. You'll have read about that in the scroll that was read to you earlier. And he was coming right through. And I tell you, everybody in town wanted to see him. There was even word going around he'd only just healed a blind person. And we'd heard such stories about him, and it was coming to Passover, and some people were thinking, this is the Messiah. There were people crying out, Son of David, which would indicate they believed he was the Messiah. And so everybody's crowding in there. And of course, you might be surprised, but I wanted to see him too. Only my problem was I was a bit on the short side. And okay, I was respected in one sense, in that face to face, nobody was going to, confront me because I could whack taxes on them something really good. But when all you could see was their backs, it was different. And if I came to the crowd, there was no way through. I was too short. I couldn't see Jesus. So I did two things that is absolutely scandalous in Middle Eastern culture. I've got a few things about Middle Eastern culture to tell you 21st century Westerners tonight, and this is one of them. A prominent man, anybody who has any self-respect as an adult, who thinks they have a position in society, never, ever runs. It is just out of the way. It's in many cultures of the world even today. If you have a position in society, you do not run. And I ran. Now, of course, all the crowds were going that way. I made sure I took back streets and hoped that nobody would see me, because if anybody saw and said, it would be such a shame. And you see, I lived in an honour-shame culture, and everything hung on not coming into any shame. So I ran and I ran out of town. And I ran out of town at least 50 cubits, because sycamore trees could not be planted inside Jericho. They had to be planted, it was the city of palms, and there are various cultural reasons I won't go into now, but sycamore trees could not be in town. They had to be out of town. And that was my plan. It was really, really good, because I could come and, now I tell you what, trying to run in these things too was really something. Then try and climb a tree in this kind of clothing, it's really difficult. So there I was. I climbed up the tree. Now the value of these sycamore trees is that they have low branches. You may have heard different things about sycamore trees, but the Jordan Valley sycamore trees are like this: low branches and wide leaves. I could be completely hidden. And I'm sure nobody saw me climb up the tree. I was completely hidden. All I needed was a spot to see through these big leaves, because I wanted to see Jesus. Now you might say, well, why in the world did you want to see Jesus so much that you would do two scandalous things? Two things that if you were caught out, the shame would be unbearable. I mean, you've lived to be on it. Why are you running the risk of all this shame? Some people have said, oh, he was curious. But was it just curiosity? Curiosity wouldn't make you run the risk of such deep shame. And I think that writer Luke really hit the nail on the head when he said, he just didn't say he wanted to see Jesus, he said he wanted to see who Jesus was. And that was it. I'd heard so many stories. I mean, there was no way back for me, back into the people of God. I wasn't wanting to meet Jesus or have any kind of contact with him, but I was so intrigued. The miracles they talked about, the teaching he gave, the way he put down the Pharisees and the Sadducees and teaching. You just heard these snippets, and I just felt if I could just have a good look at him, and I could really get a sense of who this man was. I mean, what if he was the Messiah? Here I am, one of the oppressors. You know what the Messiah's meant to do. There was that bit of a worry as well. So I really wanted to see who he was. And you know, there was something special about this, because he must have been a holy guy, somebody close to God, but he was different to the Pharisees. He was different to the Sadducees. And that intrigued me as well. And I think it stirred some kind of sense of even spiritual need in my life. Hard to define, but maybe I had a sense of lostness. You know, all the wealth and the forced respect, it wasn't satisfying me. People go after things and they think that will meet their needs, but it doesn't. And that was what I experienced. So I knew there was no hope for me. I just wanted to see him. Well, anyway, there I am hiding, completely hidden. And he's coming out of Jerusalem, very slow moving. There's such a crowd. And, you know, I'd really counted on the crowd dissipating by then. I thought, well, by then he's leaving town, you know, he's goodbye. You could see they were disappointed. They would have loved him to have stayed. Somebody would have been lined up, somebody prominent to give hospitality. But he was coming out of town. He was not staying. And the crowd would have been disappointed. And then the worst possible thing that could ever happen happened. You know, sycamore trees, they give a bit of shade over the road. As he got close, you wouldn't believe it, he looks up right through that little space where I'm hiding, and he sees me. And when he sees me, every other eye goes in that direction. I had been caught out. Now, some people wonder why Jesus knew Zacchaeus' name. Well, I tell you, doesn't take much imagination. You see the top tax gatherer ridiculously up a tree in total shame, and you have the anonymity of a crowd. What are you going to do? You're going to tell him exactly what you think of him. And the abuse and mockery that I got, I just wanted to disappear, but I was stuck up a tree. And then Jesus looked like he was going to say something, so the crowd quietened down. And I thought, oh no, here it comes. Because something I know about Jesus is he's against oppression and oppressors. I mean, he just healed a blind guy who was oppressed by blindness. He really had some hard words for those Pharisees that oppressed the people. And here I was, the top oppressor. What in the world was he going to say? And I wasn't going to be able to get away. This was the worst day of my life. And he said two things that shocked me and shocked everybody else. Well, he'd heard my name, so he said, Zacchaeus. But he said it in a kind of a friendly way. It wasn't mean and nasty and about like he was just going to say, woe to you, Zacchaeus. It was friendly. And then he said, hurry up, get down. I need to stay at your place tonight. And I nearly fell out of the tree, but I did what he said. I hurried as quickly as I could, like this, and I'm delighted. I'm absolutely delighted, because instead of blame, I was getting acceptance. I was getting astonishing friendship. I was getting unexpected love. I merited abuse and the worst possible things, and what I got was the exact opposite. I got grace. And another thing in culture, if you knew about literature, Hebrew literature, Israeli literature, you'd see how this story is structured. The part where Luke talks about this is right in the centre of the story. Everything leads to this point and everything flows from this point. This is the main heart of my story. When I received this unexpected love. But the thing is, it came at a cost. It came at a cost to Jesus, because you'll notice that the people grumbled. They were angry. The hostility they felt towards me was turning onto Jesus. And you know what? He was going to come to my house. Now, anybody who comes to my house, I'm unclean, they become unclean. The hostility and anger and hatred that was mine was going on to him. And if you knew the Aramaic language, to become a guest of somebody, you could easily translate that into your languages with the idea of bonding, because of the idea of hospitality and being received into a house. And they said, he's bonding with a sinner. Jesus was giving me costly grace. You know, I thought about this later, and I'm sure this was meant for the disciples to understand too. That in just over a week, what had just happened to me was going to, in miniature, was going to happen on a great scale. In just over a week, Jesus was going to show incredible, ultimate, costly grace when he died on the cross. And not just the sins of a tax collector, but the sins of the whole world came on him. And the acceptance and forgiveness that I was receiving was going to be available to everybody, because Jesus would pay costly grace. Now, he came to my place, we settled in, we were having supper, and of course you recline at supper time. And what really had happened to me was that I had been lost and now I was found. And I don't know whether I overthink this or not, but you know, I realised what I was doing up that tree. I was hiding. I was a sinner, hiding behind fig leaves, hiding from Jesus. And I just wonder if that reminds you of anybody hiding their sin in a fig tree. In your scroll, it said sycamore fig, and that's right, it's a fig tree. You know, I had to come down. I had to accept being found. I had to receive Jesus into my house because he said it was necessary. And you know, it had started out, I just wanted to see Jesus, but now I got to know him. I got to hear him. I got to really know who he was. And you can't experience his costly love without it changing you. Now, those of you who are good at mathematics might have been a little bit surprised when it was read to you about what I got up and said. I got up from reclining at table. It says I stood up and I said, Lord, I'm going to give half of everything I have to the poor, and 4 times anything I've cheated anybody, I'm going to pay them back 4 times. And you're going to do the sums and you're going to think, how in the world is that possible? I've got to explain to you, in the Middle East, if I had said anything less than that, people would have said, he doesn't really mean it. That was my way of genuinely saying, I'm going to put things right with my community. I am going to do the right, as best as it's possible, as best as it's humanly possible, whatever it costs me, I'm going to put things right. And you can't know Jesus without a change happening in your life. And if you've been found by Jesus, and if you know him, it's going to impact you. It's going to impact your level of possessions. It's going to affect your life. It's going to affect your relationships. It's going to affect how you think. You know, Jesus said then a couple of really wonderful things. He said, salvation has come to this home. Salvation has come. You know, salvation didn't walk in on its own. It was brought, and it was brought by Jesus in his act of costly grace. And then he said, this man also is a son of Abraham. Well, technically, I was a son of Abraham, but in reality, spiritually, I wasn't. I was on the outside of the people of God. And Jesus was saying the change that happened in my life meant the same faith that produced works that operated in Abraham were working in me. I had a change of identity. I was a changed man. I'd been what everyone would call a sinner, and now I was a son of Abraham, indeed, a son of God. Jesus came to seek and to save the lost. Who's lost? Well, the scriptures say all have sinned, all have gone astray. That makes us all far from God, all without hope. All of us are lost unless we experience the costly grace that Jesus gives us. I want to say to you tonight, you who believe this, you have a powerful story. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's the story that leads people to encounter Jesus, which changes lives. And lives go from being wasted to being meaningful. They go from being far from God to knowing God. Jesus gives costly grace. This is what happened to Zacchaeus. This is what can happen to everybody. Jesus came to seek and to save the lost. Have you been found? If not, you need to let yourself be found by Jesus and receive the forgiveness that he offers through his death on the cross. And if you have been found, well, surely you're called to join him in what he's doing. Seeking and saving the lost is what Jesus is about. Seeking and saving the lost is what we should be about. So take it from Zacchaeus. Let that be my legacy to you. Jesus came to seek and save the lost. He did it through costly grace. Will you accept that? And will you join him in his activity of seeking and saving the lost? Thank you for listening to me tonight. I'm going back to the first century.